It all started in a quiet little town tucked away behind endless cornfields, where everyone knew everyone, and secrets didn't stay buried for long. But this secret, was different. It had been buried so deep, so carefully, that not even the man living it knew the whole truth. His name was Daniel Cross. He was in his late 40s, tall with salt and pepper hair, and the kind of tired eyes that came from years of trying to fix things that were already broken. A small-time construction contractor, divorced and living alone in a modest brick house he built with his own hands. Daniel had spent most of his life with only guilt and silence for company, until she walked into his world. Her name was Lily, 19 years old, smart, beautiful, a little strange if you asked people around town. She'd just moved from California to start college and was working part-time at the hardware store Daniel frequented. That's where they met. It wasn't instant fireworks or anything like that. It started slow. A conversation, a shared coffee, a helping hand when her car wouldn't start. People whispered, of course. A man nearly 30 years older spending so much time with a girl half his age. Tongues wagged. But Daniel ignored them. Lily didn't care either. She was mature beyond her years, curious, sharp, and bold. Before long, they were inseparable. No one really knew Lily's background. She didn't talk about her family, only said she'd grown up in the foster system, bounced around until she aged out. There were no baby pictures, no family reunions, no last name she liked to keep, just Lily. She told Daniel he made her feel safe for the first time in her life. He told her she made him feel alive again. 6 months later, Daniel did something that made the whole town stop breathing. He proposed. On one knee in front of everyone at the county fair, he pulled out a modest ring and asked Lily to marry him, and she said yes. That night, the news spread like wildfire. Some were disgusted, others fascinated, but no one could look away. They called it twisted, called Daniel a creep, called Lily broken. But they didn't care. They were in love. And love, as they kept telling each other, didn't play by society's rules. As the wedding day approached, strange things started happening. An old man showed up at Daniel's door one night, said he had something urgent to tell him about Lily. Daniel slammed the door in his face. Letters started arriving with no return address, just warnings. One read, "You don't know who she is. Stop before it's too late." But Daniel thought it was just judgmental people trying to scare them off. He didn't know. He didn't know how deep this went. He didn't know the truth. Not yet. On the morning of the wedding, the sky was clear, the birds were loud, and the air felt unusually heavy, like something was waiting to happen. Lily wore a cream-colored dress, simple but elegant, and smiled the whole time like nothing in the world could touch her. Daniel looked at her like she was a miracle. They stood under the old oak tree behind Daniel's house, surrounded by a small crowd of reluctant guests, mostly Lily's college friends, and a few of Daniel's co-workers, who were too stunned to refuse the invite. Just as the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, something happened. A woman screamed. All heads turned, and that's when everything changed. The scream didn't come from one of the guests. It came from the edge of the woods behind Daniel's property. It cut through the ceremony like a blade, sharp, shrill, and full of panic. Heads swiveled, guests stood frozen, and Lily's smile faded just slightly. Daniel instinctively moved in front of her, shielding her like there was danger lurking in the trees. Then from the trees she emerged. An older woman, maybe in her late 50s, stormed out into the clearing. Her hair was wild, grey-streaked, and tangled. Her face was pale and tight with something between rage and horror. She was holding a folder in one hand and waving it like a weapon. Her voice cracked as she screamed again. "Stop this! You can't go through with this!" "She's your daughter, Daniel!" The crowd gasped. People backed up, some even reached for their phones. Lily's face turned ghost white. Daniel, though, he just stood there, blinking, confused, like his brain hadn't caught up with his ears. "What the hell are you talking about?" he asked, his voice low and shaky. The woman stepped closer, tears welling in her eyes. "You don't remember me, do you?" she asked, quieter now. "My name is Marla Jennings. We were together. A long time ago, 20 years back, in Seattle." Daniel stared at her. He did remember Seattle, a rough patch in his life after the divorce where he moved to start over. He remembered a lot of women too, brief things, drunken nights, faded names, faces he couldn't even picture now. "You got me pregnant," she continued, her voice trembling. "I tried to tell you. You were gone. I raised her alone for 6 years until I couldn't anymore. I put her in the system when I got sick. I lost everything." Lily had gone completely silent. Daniel looked at her, eyes wide. "Lily." "No," she whispered. "No, she's lying. She's insane. I don't even know her." But Marla didn't stop. She opened the folder and shoved it into the hands of the nearest person, a young guy who looked like he regretted ever accepting the invite. Inside were documents, birth records, DNA results, pictures. "She's your daughter," Marla said. "I didn't want to come, but when I saw the announcement in the paper, I couldn't let this happen. I won't let it happen." For a moment, silence reigned. Then Daniel took a step back. He looked at Lily again. Something had shifted in her expression. Her lower lip was trembling. Her eyes weren't panicked anymore. They were cold, blank, like a curtain had dropped. He whispered, "Is it true?" Lily didn't answer. Someone in the crowd murmured, "Jesus Christ." Suddenly, Lily turned and ran. She kicked off her shoes and bolted across the field in that cream-colored dress, heading for the tree line. Daniel hesitated just for a second, then chased after her. They disappeared into the woods. The guests didn't follow. No one moved. Marla collapsed to the ground, sobbing into her hands. In the trees, Daniel's breath came in sharp bursts as he tried to keep up. He didn't know what he was running toward anymore. All he knew was he had to catch her, had to look her in the eyes and know for himself. And then he found her, standing still, barefoot in the dirt, surrounded by trees. Her dress snagged on a branch, blood on her shin where she'd fallen. She didn't run anymore. "I knew," she said softly, not even turning to look at him. Daniel stopped dead. "I knew," she repeated, louder this time. "I knew everything. I found the papers a year ago, a letter, a picture of you and her. I knew the moment I saw your face at the hardware store." His voice cracked. "Then why?" "Because you left her," she said, turning now. "You left us. You forgot we existed. You were just gone, like we never mattered." Tears filled her eyes. "I wanted you to love me. I wanted you to know what it felt like to be betrayed, confused, ashamed, just like I did. I didn't plan to fall in love with you, but I did, and that messed everything up." Daniel's heart felt like it had stopped beating. She stepped closer, reaching out. But he stepped back. "What happens now?" he asked, barely audible. Lily looked up at the sky, exhaled, and whispered, "That depends on what you choose to do with the truth." And just like that, the silence of the woods closed in again, but the wedding was over, and the damage was done. Daniel didn't say a word. He just stood there, staring at Lily like she wasn't even real anymore. His mind reeled, torn between a million emotions: shame, disgust, heartbreak, confusion. Every part of him wanted to scream, cry, run, maybe even vanish altogether. But he couldn't move, couldn't speak. The air felt heavy, pressing down on him, choking out the sound from the world around him. Lily, on the other hand, was calm now, eerily calm. She bent down, plucked a leaf from the ground and rubbed it between her fingers, like none of this was as big a deal as it should have been. "I didn't expect her to show up," she said, still not looking at him. "I thought she was dead." Daniel's voice came out hoarse, barely human. "Why didn't you just tell me?" She finally looked at him, her eyes empty but sharp. "Because you wouldn't have looked at me the way you did if I had, and I needed that. I needed to know what it felt like to be loved by you, even if it was sick." Daniel swallowed hard, bile rising in his throat. "This is wrong," he muttered. Lily nodded. "I know." There was a long silence. Only the rustling leaves and far-off voices carried through the air from the wedding guests who hadn't left yet. Maybe they were still trying to figure out if what they witnessed was real. Maybe they were still filming. "You knew the whole time?" Daniel asked again. "From the start?" "Not the whole time. Just after the second week," she admitted. You mentioned Seattle once, and then it all clicked. The timelines, your name, your face. I went back and searched, dug through old foster files, birth certificates, I knew. And you stayed. She didn't respond, just kept rolling the leaf in her fingers until it crumbled. Daniel dropped to his knees, his hands in his hair. My God, what did we do? What? You did, she corrected quietly. I already knew, I chose it. Daniel looked up at her, eyes red. This isn't love, Lily. She gave a hollow laugh. It was the only version of it I had. That hit him like a brick to the chest. They sat there in silence for minutes. That felt like hours. The sunlight began to fade through the trees, casting strange shadows across their faces. Neither of them moved. The wedding was long forgotten now. All that remained was a broken man and the girl who had shattered the last thing he believed about himself. Then Lily stood up. I'm leaving, she said. I packed a bag this morning, before all this. I knew something would happen today. I just didn't know how. Daniel stood slowly. Where will you go? She shrugged. Somewhere cold, somewhere quiet. Maybe Alaska. I don't know. She stepped past him, brushing her shoulder against his as she walked away. He turned to watch her go, and for the first time since this nightmare began, he didn't chase her. Maybe he finally realized that some things were meant to stay broken. By the time he returned to the yard, most of the guests were gone. A few were still lingering, whispering, avoiding eye contact. Marla was sitting alone on a folding chair, her face tear-stained but calmer now. When Daniel walked past her, she didn't speak, just handed him the folder again. He didn't take it. He didn't need to anymore. Instead, he walked into his house, shut the door, locked it, and sat at the edge of the bed he and Lily had once shared. And for the first time in decades, Daniel Cross cried, not for the life he lost, but for the life he never even realized he had. The house was unbearably silent. Every creak in the floor, every faint tick of the old wall clock felt louder than it should. Daniel sat at the edge of the bed, hands pressed against his face as if covering his eyes would somehow erase what he'd seen, what he'd done, what he now knew. But the truth didn't go away. It lingered in the air like the scent of burnt wood, sharp, bitter, and impossible to ignore. He hadn't touched the folder Marla gave him, but he didn't need to. Her words, Lily's confession, the shattered pieces of his memory, they all came together like a sick puzzle. How many nights had he sat at this same bed, holding her hand, touching her skin, never knowing the blood they shared? Daniel couldn't sleep, he couldn't eat. By the next morning, his phone had exploded with missed calls, messages, and news alerts. Someone had filmed the scene in the backyard. It had already gone viral. Father marries daughter. Wedding turns into nightmare. Headlines on gossip blogs, Facebook shares, local news blurbs. His name was everywhere. His business had been trashed overnight. Clients cancelled. Contracts terminated. The town that used to wave at him when he drove by now stared through him like he was filth. He didn't blame them. He blamed himself. By the end of the week, Daniel hadn't seen or heard from Lily. She'd vanished completely. No social media, no texts, not even a rumor. The town seemed split between curiosity and outrage. Some wanted her arrested. Others claimed she was the victim. Some called her a liar. But the one person who stayed silent was Daniel. He spent most of his days drinking, staring at the same pictures over and over. Pictures he didn't even know he had until he went through an old shoebox in the garage. Inside were some blurry Polaroids from his Seattle days. One of them was of Marla, pregnant, smiling, and beside her, him, young, stupid, smiling too. A moment captured before everything fell apart. He hadn't remembered it until now. What haunted him most wasn't that he'd forgotten. It was how easily he'd moved on, how little he'd cared. Marla had been a fling to him, a phase in a dark period. He never followed up, never asked. Just drifted away into the next chapter of his life like nothing mattered. And now that chapter had found him again, in the most twisted way possible. A week turned into 2. Then, one night, there was a knock at the door. Daniel was half asleep, on the couch, surrounded by empty beer bottles and takeout cartons. He almost didn't answer it. He figured it was another reporter, or worse, someone from town ready to spit in his face, but something about the knock made him pause. It wasn't loud, it wasn't angry, it was soft, careful, like whoever was. Behind the door wasn't sure they should even be knocking at all. He opened it slowly, and there she was, Lily. She looked different, paler, thinner. Her hair was pulled back into a messy braid, her eyes ringed with shadows. She wore a heavy coat, even though it was warm outside, and clutched a backpack like it held her last piece of safety. "I'm not here to stay," she said right away, voice tired. Daniel didn't speak, just stepped aside. She walked in and sat on the edge of the couch like a stranger, not the girl who'd once danced barefoot in his kitchen. She didn't look at him when she spoke. "I went to see her," she said. "My mother, Marla." Daniel sat across from her, unsure if he should ask questions or just listen. "She told me everything," Lily continued, "about how you left, about how she tried to find you, about how sick she got. I hated her for giving me up. But after seeing her now—" She stopped, voice cracking. "I think she hated herself more." Daniel cleared his throat. "I'm sorry, I didn't know." "I know you didn't," Lily said softly, "but not knowing doesn't erase the damage." A long silence fell between them. Finally, she reached into her backpack and pulled something out, a sealed envelope. She placed it on the coffee table. "I'm leaving. For good this time. No phone, no email, no trace. I thought I needed revenge, but it didn't fix anything. I'm still just broken. And you're not the father I imagined when I was a kid, but you're real. That's all I wanted to know." Daniel stared at the envelope, then at her. "What's in it?" She stood up. "Answers, and maybe some closure." She walked to the door. Before leaving, she turned her head slightly. "I loved you, even if it was wrong. That was the realest thing I've ever felt." Then she was gone again. Daniel stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it. Inside were two things: a picture of a little girl with big brown eyes sitting on a park bench, and a letter addressed simply to Dad. Daniel's hands trembled as he unfolded the letter. The paper was thin, creased like it had been folded and unfolded too many times. The handwriting was neat, delicate, careful, each letter shaped like it mattered. At the top, in all caps, it said one word: Dad. He braced himself. Nothing he'd felt so far, shock, shame, heartbreak, had prepared him for this. "Dear Dad, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not because I'm running, but because I need to breathe without this secret choking me anymore. I know everything now. I know who you were to my mother. I know who you were supposed to be to me, and I know who you unknowingly became. You were my fantasy long before you were real. In the system, when things got dark, I made you up in my head. A man who was kind, who'd come find me, who would say sorry even if he didn't know what for. I clung to that dream like a lifeline. When I met you at the hardware store, I didn't know it was you at first, but something in my bones told me I was standing in front of someone important. I felt it before I even understood it. And then the truth came. It hit me like a freight train. I should have run. Should have told you. Should have burned the picture, deleted your number and walked away. But I didn't, because part of me wanted to punish you for leaving me. For leaving her. For living all these years without looking back. I thought, let him love me, let him feel everything, then let him find out. That was the plan. But then you did love me, and that ruined everything, because suddenly I didn't want to hurt you anymore. I just wanted to stay in the illusion. I wanted to keep pretending I was just a girl and you were just a man, and this was something beautiful. I never lied about how I felt. That part was real, sick, twisted, unforgivable, but real. You're not a monster, Dad. You're just a man who forgot something important. A man who paid the price for forgetting. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you not to hate me more than you already hate yourself. We're both scarred. But maybe, from far away, we can start to heal. Goodbye, Lily. Daniel let the letter slide from his fingers. The words twisted inside him like a dull blade. He didn't know how to process it, What she said, how she said it, what it meant about him, about them. He picked up the photo. The girl on the bench must have been 6, smiling with chipped front teeth and chocolate smeared on her cheek. The handwriting on the back said, "My 6th birthday, Mom made cupcakes." His breath caught in his chest. It wasn't just a picture. It was a memory that had nothing to do with him, yet everything to do with who he had been to her, even from afar. He stayed there until the sun started to rise. Later that morning, Marla called. He hadn't spoken to her since the wedding. She didn't ask how he was. She didn't even ask about Lily. She just said, "There's a place upstate, a retreat, quiet, for people like us, people who lost more than they realized. You should think about it." He said he would, but he didn't. Instead, he spent the next few days fixing things, not with apologies. There were some wounds, words. Couldn't touch, but with actions. He gave his business away to his foreman, sold his house, donated every cent of the wedding money to a local shelter for abused kids, cleaned out every drawer and box that held the weight of his mistakes. And then, one morning, he packed a small bag and drove north. He didn't know where Lily had gone, and maybe it was better that way. She needed distance. So did he. But he took the letter and the photo with him, not because he needed to be reminded of what he did, but to remember who she really was, beneath the pain, beneath the scars, beneath the unimaginable story that would follow them both for the rest of their lives. The drive north was long, winding, and silent, just the way Daniel needed it. He didn't turn on the radio, didn't check his phone. It was almost as if he wanted to sit inside his own guilt, let it soak into him like rain on dry earth. The farther he drove from the town, the more it felt like he was leaving behind a version of himself that didn't deserve to exist anymore. He ended up in a place he hadn't seen in over 20 years, a cabin deep in the mountains, one he had once built for a client who never moved in. The man died before construction finished. Daniel bought it for cheap, thinking he might use it for vacations, but he never did. Until now. He pulled into the long gravel driveway and stepped out. The cabin was still solid. The pine wood had darkened with time, but the structure held. There were no neighbors, no cell service, no cameras, just trees, wind, and the heavy quiet of isolation. Daniel lit the fireplace, cleaned the dust off the counter, and unpacked just enough to get by. He didn't need comfort. He needed penance. Each day he took long walks in the woods, sometimes with the letter in his jacket pocket. He read it, over and over, not to relive it, but to remember the truth as it came, raw, jagged, irreversible. He wondered what Lily was doing now, if she had found work, shelter, peace. Part of him feared she hadn't. The other part feared she had. Because if she was fine, if she was moving on, then it meant she really could detach, leave him behind like he had once done to her. Some nights he imagined her knocking on the door again, face softer, voice lighter, telling him they could find some way to stay in each other's lives. But she never came. Instead, something else did. It started with a phone call from an unknown number. He didn't plan to answer, but something told him to. The voice on the other end was male, gravelly, older. Not someone he recognized. "You're Daniel Cross?" "Who's asking?" "I'm Detective Ray Navarro out of Santa Clara. I've been trying to locate a Lily Jennings. She listed you as a next-of-kin emergency contact at one point. I didn't have any other number." Daniel's heart skipped. "Why are you looking for her?" There was a pause. "She's been reported missing." The words hit him like ice water. "She's been gone for 3 weeks," the detective continued. "Roommates say she packed a bag, said she was going north and disappeared. Her last bank transaction was in Fresno. After that, nothing. No cell pings, no cards, no sightings." Daniel's mind raced. She's not hurt. We don't know yet. We're treating it as a voluntary disappearance for now, but if you know anything, if she reached out to you—" "She didn't," Daniel said quickly. Not since she left." The detective sighed. "All right, if she makes contact, please call us. We're just trying to make sure she's safe." Daniel hung up and stared at the cabin walls, heart thudding. She was missing. Gone. And something inside him told him it wasn't just another vanishing act. Lily was smart, calculated, yes, but not reckless, not suicidal, not this. That night he didn't sleep. He lit a fire and sat in front of it, Lily's photo, in his hand. He stared at the chipped tooth smile, the tiny hands holding a cupcake, and wondered where that little girl had gone. Had he destroyed her twice? Once by leaving, then again by loving her. The next morning, Daniel packed a bag and left the cabin. He was going to find her. He didn't care how long it took, didn't care what it cost. He couldn't fix what happened between them, but maybe, just maybe, he could make sure she didn't disappear into the dark like she was never born. Because she was born, she was his, and he wasn't going to lose her again. Daniel drove for hours. He didn't have a plan, just a direction south toward Fresno, where Lily's last known transaction had taken place. He figured maybe if he could walk the same streets she walked, stand where she stood, he might catch a glimpse, find a clue, feel something. He was grasping at straws, chasing a ghost. But it was all he had left. The motel she'd stayed at was cheap, tucked behind a rundown diner and a liquor store with flickering neon signs. He walked into the office and showed the tired clerk a photo. "She stayed here?" Daniel asked. The man scratched at his neck, glanced at the picture, and shrugged. "Yeah, a couple weeks back, room 206, paid cash. Stayed one night, left before sunrise." "Did she say where she was going?" "She didn't say anything at all." Daniel stood there for a moment. The desperation on his face must have been obvious because the clerk softened slightly. "She looked off," he added, "not like high or drunk, just broken." Daniel left without saying thank you. He walked past room 206, stood outside the door, and placed his hand on the cold knob. It was locked, empty now, but he could feel the residue of her presence, like she'd left a part of herself behind. At the diner, he sat in the corner booth and ordered coffee he didn't want. He stared at the people walking in and out, wondering if any of them had seen her, wondering if any of them knew the story, his story, their story, and that's when he saw it. A flyer, taped to the diner's corkboard, a black and white paper with a grainy photo of Lily's face at the top. "Missing Lily Jennings, last seen March 2nd. If you have information, call..." Daniel ripped it down and stuffed it in his jacket. His hands were shaking, his chest tightened. She wasn't just gone. She was gone, gone. People were looking. Her face was out there. Her story was in motion again, but this time he wasn't behind it. And that scared him more than anything. He spent the next 3 days canvassing the city, homeless shelters, libraries, bus stations. He showed her picture to anyone who would listen. Some shook their heads, some walked away. A few took the flyer and promised to call if they saw her. Then on the 4th night he got a lead. A woman at a halfway house in the rougher part of town said she'd seen a girl matching Lily's description at a bus stop 3 nights ago, said she looked cold, out of place, but didn't ask for help. "She had that look," the woman said, "like she was running from something but didn't know where to go." Daniel followed that thread like a bloodhound. He searched every bus terminal in the area, asked the drivers, checked security cameras when he could talk someone into letting him peek. Most of the time, he came up with nothing, until one camera showed her. She was wearing a hoodie, hair tucked, up, standing on the edge of the terminal, looking around nervously. Daniel paused the footage. Behind her was a sign, Greyhound, Route 18, Las Vegas, Phoenix, Flagstaff. The timestamp was 2 days ago. He had a direction now. He drove through the night again, heart pounding with each passing hour. When he reached Vegas, it was almost noon. He checked the shelters again, checked motels, hostels, the Strip. Nothing. It wasn't until he wandered into a little bookstore tucked between a pawn shop and a psychic's den that he got lucky. A woman behind the counter, younger, blue hair, lip ring, looked at the photo and tilted her head. "Yeah, I saw her," she said. "Came in asking about poetry books. Bought a Sylvia Plath collection and a copy of The Bell Jar. Looked like hell. Eyes swollen like she'd been crying all day. When was this? Yesterday. Did she say anything? She asked if we had a bathroom. Said she'd be right back. Never came out." Daniel's blood froze. "What? She..." Was in there for 20 minutes. When I knocked, she was gone, out the window, like a ghost. He ran to the restroom. It had a tiny window that led to an alley behind the store. She'd slipped away. Again. He stood in that alley for a long time, staring at the spot she vanished from. Then he did something he hadn't done in years. He got down on his knees and prayed. Not to be forgiven, not to be healed, just to find her, because now he was starting to believe she didn't want to be found. The sun was setting over Las Vegas, casting long orange shadows between the high-rises and the broken-down motels. Daniel sat on the curb behind the bookstore, feeling smaller than he'd ever felt in his life. The kind of small that comes when you realize someone you love might never come back, not because they're gone, but because they've chosen to disappear. He lit a cigarette. He hadn't smoked in years, but he found a pack at the gas station and gave in. Every inhale made him cough, but it gave his hands something to do other than shake. Then his phone buzzed. It was an unknown number. His heart nearly stopped. He answered with a shaky, "Hello?" There was silence, then a breath, and then her voice. "You really came all this way?" Daniel stood up slowly, turning in place as if expecting her to appear from the shadows. "Lily, where are you?" "Close," she said. "Watching you." "I've been watching you since you got here." His eyes scanned the alley, rooftops, windows. "Why? Why won't you let me see you?" "Because seeing you hurts," she said softly. "Because every time I look at you, I see a man who should have been my father, and instead became something else." Daniel's voice cracked. "I didn't know, Lily. I swear to you I didn't know." "I know you didn't," she whispered. "But it doesn't erase it, doesn't undo it." He was crying now, tears falling freely, no shame left. "I don't want to undo it. I just want to be there for you now, however you'll let me, as a father, as anything. I just don't want you to disappear again." There was a pause on the line. A long, heavy silence filled only with breathing and unsaid words. "I thought disappearing would fix me," she said finally. "I thought if I ran far enough the memories would fade. But they don't. They sit inside me like splinters, and every night I ask myself who I am, what I am." "You're my daughter," Daniel said. "That's who you are, and nothing changes that. Nothing ever will." Another silence. Then she said, "There's a bus station on East Fremont, platform 3, midnight." And the line went dead. Daniel took off running. Midnight. Platform 3 was mostly empty. A few travelers leaned on duffel bags, staring at phones. A janitor swept up trash with dead eyes, and there on the far bench sat Lily, hood up, face half hidden. Daniel approached slowly, gently. Like if he made a sudden move, she might vanish again. She looked up. Her eyes were tired, red, but they were hers, his. He sat beside her, not touching, not speaking, just being. "I don't know how to go back," she said after a while. "How do you go back after something like that?" "You don't," Daniel said quietly. "You go forward, broken maybe, but forward." She looked down at her hands, rubbing her thumbs together. "What happens now?" "That's your choice," he said. "You want me to leave, I will. You want help, I'll give it. You want silence, I'll be silent. But I'm here. No more running, no more pretending." She stared at him. "What if I never forgive you?" He met her eyes. "Then I'll still be your father." Tears filled her eyes. For a moment it seemed like she might pull away, but instead she leaned in and rested her head on his shoulder. They sat like that until the bus rolled up. She didn't get on. 3 months later, they were living in a different state. Different. Names, different lives. Therapy sessions filled the weeks. Some days were good, some were unbearable. But they were trying. Not as lovers, not as fugitives, but as a father and daughter, clawing their way out of the darkest hole imaginable. Together. And while the past would never leave them, neither would each other.